1959, Juan Armenta Camacho, an amateur and self-taught archaeologist, he found these precious bones in Puebla, Mexico. The bones appear to have mysterious carvings. Camacho thought they looked like animals. The question was, what kind of animals and from which era? The reason why you and I may have never heard of the archaeological site Hueyatlaco in Mexico might be because, as YouTubers Michael Button and Will claim, it was buried by archaeology. But is it true? Michael gives us a clue. He goes on to say that because the bones were already fossilized, they had to be many thousands of years old, suggesting Ice Age people had lived in central Mexico far earlier than mainstream theory allowed. But according to scientific records, that's not very true. Scientists explain that fossilized bones do not automatically suggest Ice Age. Not at all. Fossilization is pretty much when bones, even plants and other living things, are buried in the ground. Under the right conditions, which include being under sediment, they can slowly turn to stone. That's because minerals from the soil fill it in. Scientists call this stage mineralization. It's like nature's Medusa, but it happens very slowly. However, scientists explain that fossilization doesn't equal Ice Age. That's because it is not a precise clock. It's a transformation. Maybe the issue, at least with Michael Button, is not that he's lying on purpose, but the fact that he references Wikipedia throughout his entire video. You know, it is not considered a legitimate source of information. Anyone can write and edit Wikipedia pages. But maybe Wikipedia is not entirely wrong this time. And so the story continues. Camacho was curious. He just wanted other scientists to help him out to test, because while something is alive, it keeps taking in carbon from air, food, or water. When it dies, it stops taking in new carbon, and the carbon-14 inside slowly disappears over time. Clever scientists figure out that by measuring how much carbon-14 is in dead organisms, they can tell about how long ago the animal died, usually up to 50,000 years.
The problem was dating. The bones were so fossilized, their organic materials had been replaced by minerals, preventing C14 from being used on these bones.
That means there was no carbon left to measure. The carbon test would not work. So to figure out this puzzle, the team brought the dawn of geology back then, Harold E. Malt, an American superstar in the scientific world. Hal Malt estimated that the overlying volcanic ash was roughly 22,000 years old. To understand why, we need to know what the heck is stratigraphic comparison. In archaeology, it means comparing those layers from one place to the layers at another place. Each one of those layers is like a page in Earth's history book. The deeper you go, the older the layer usually is. Considering that the new findings at Hueyatlaco had no carbon to be tested, Hal decided to find an area a few miles away from Hueyatlaco, but similar enough to do some testing. And by similar, I mean in terms of these layers.
Using the carbon-14 dating method on the shell from Calopan, a date of 22,000 years was derived.
We come back to YouTubers Will and Michael Button because they both make very specific claims about what happens next. In Michael Button's words, within a few years, he says, Mexican authorities suspended the excavations entirely, and the Hueyatlaco project fell into limbo. However, I checked scientific journals, studies, and publications about this case, including Juan Camacho's reports, and there is no legitimate record of Mexican authorities suspending the excavations. However, There is a much darker claim that Michael Button Will and the supposed daughter of Juan Armenta Camacho, Virginia Steen McIntyre, arrived to Hueyatlaco in 1973 with her team, and they returned shocking results using a variety of methods. Those methods included uranium series dating on the bones discovered. The result was 260,000 years old. That's pretty wild. If the bones were indeed 250,000 years old, it would rewrite the story of the first Americans. It would place humans here long before the Ice Age, much earlier than any accepted model of humans in the Americas. More testing had to be done. Will the next test match the 200,000-year-old timeline?
Ages that I have for this volcanic layer tell me that these rocks cannot be younger than about 250,000 years. My ages are minimum ages, not maximum ages.
I was sent zircon separates, which I analyzed here in my lab. So I was prepared for the samples to be young. Analyzed the samples, produced an age which was between 400 and 500,000 years.
Examined the site himself and proposed a more conservative explanation. He argued that the stratigraphy could have been altered by ancient flooding or erosion, potentially moving younger tools into older deposits. Yet, multiple geologists disagree.
That zone, and it is not interrupted, not incised by anything. Therefore, the strata that contain the bifacial tools and together with the bones has not been disturbed at all.
Of course, this story gives us yet another twist, and perhaps this is where it actually gets dark. Let me proudly introduce you to Cynthia Irwin Williams. Irwin Williams and Camacho began digging carefully in a more scientific way, layer by layer, so that nothing gets lost or mixed up. Before that, Camacho had worked more like a local fossil hunter. According to Camacho's report, underneath this very important layer of ash, she returned all her bone and tool discoveries over to Mexico's National Museum because that's exactly what the law required and still does. When she goes back to study them, her discoveries were simply gone. And if those scientists are not lying, well, they're still missing as of today. According to legitimate records, Hueyatlaco wasn't buried by jealous men with guns. It was a lot more complex than that. It was buried under uncertainty, lack of advanced and precise methods, and scientific disagreements. It seemed the true story is that they were staring at a mystery that science just wasn't ready to solve yet. You're gonna love this video. It's really freaking awesome. You're gonna laugh a lot, and I guarantee it. If you don't, leave a mean comment below.